Hello, you beautiful weirdos! How are you today? Since being back, I've noticed a lot of talk about the baby hammer on Middle Tree Titan, with good reason. Us Titans were always meant to be the punchy boy gods. It's just a fact. And if you don't believe me, Google it. Look it up on Wikipedia. No, but give me a few minutes to create a page first. Okay, now you can go check it out for yourself. No, but seriously, everyone's melting everything that walks in their path with the 1-2 punch, synthoceps, throwing hammer combo, and I'm loving every bit of it. You have no idea how happy it makes me seeing Titans walk around with that big keen energy and a hammer. It's glorious. This whole setup is a monster for boss and champion damage, but one thing I've noticed is that this build lacks in the crowd control department, or everyday use. You know, for us normal people who aren't just fighting raid bosses or only doing Master Lost sectors when we sign into Destiny. So, how do we use the concept of this build while still getting those ad clearing capabilities? Well, it just so happens I made a build at the beginning of the season, but never put it out. Not sure why I didn't, but I am now. Anyways, this build is all about survivability and making you damn near unkillable as long as you're throwing the hammer. And the best part is, you still get stupid amounts of melee damage depending on how you build it out, and lots of crowd control potential. So, let's knock the dust off this build and get into it. We're gonna start off with the subclass and then move over to the basic mods that I'm pretty sure everyone is using for this build. The mods are common, but I have to cover it because this might be someone's first time hearing about it and it wouldn't be fair to them. So the first thing we're gonna need is the Middle Tree hammers. Why? Because it'd be really odd to make and equip a build around the Middle Tree hammer and not use it. That's why. Unless you're questioning why we need a Titan for this. If that's the case, you got bigger problems than I can help you with, my friend. But it's okay, we'll get through this together. I'm not going to break down the whole subclass. The only things we need to worry about are Big Hammer and Little Hammer go bonk, Roaring Flames for the 120% ability damage increase with 3 stacks, and Tireless Warrior for health regen. Alright, let's move over to the armor and mods. We're going to need at least 2 solar pieces of armor and 1 void, but the rest are optional. This is because 3 of the important mods are tied to a specific element, but everything else is fair game. I went with a solar helmet because that's what I had available, but again, completely up to you. For the mods, I honestly couldn't think of anything better than the artifact version of hands-on for the faster supers, since we're going to use our melee a lot anyways. And I say this all the time, but everybody loves faster supers, especially this one, because nothing makes my nipples harder than using a big hammer to destroy everything in my path. Titan life. Come on, admit it, yours get hard too. I don't know why I just danced when I said Titan life. For the major mod, I went with Supercharged, which is solar specific to get 2 extra stacks of Charge with Light. That's it, that's all it does, but it comes in really handy. Moving over to the arms, these next 2 mods are very important for the build, depending on what you're doing. If you plan on getting in everyone's face and bonking them with the baby hammer, then these 2 will be a game changer for survivability. The mods I'm talking about are Thermoplastic Blooming and Protective Light. Thermoplastic Blooming is an arm-specific mod that poops out an orb of power every time you kill an ad with a solar or stasis melee. This helps your super regeneration, especially with the amount of orbs you're going to create, but more importantly, it helps with survivability, which we'll get into in a moment. The other mod, Protective Light, reduces the damage you take by 50% once you hit critical health. For how long? Depends on how many stacks of Charge with Light you have. In this specific build, you can get a total of 4 stacks, which gives you 16 seconds to skedaddle your fat Titan out of danger. Good thing Titans don't miss leg day, huh? Alright, let's get over to the chest. If you do plan on getting in every enemy's face, I highly recommend the minor mod, Melee Damage Resistance, to reduce point blank range damage when up close and personal with the champion or something like that. And for the major mod, I used Melee Wellmaker to create a solar elemental well anytime you bonk an enemy with your hammer and kill it. This mod has no elemental affinity tied to it, so you can drop it anywhere you have room. Now moving over to the legs. This is where the Thermoplastic Blooming that we equipped on the arms really comes to light for survivability. We're going to be using a little mod called Recuperation. This one replenishes health every time you pick up an orb of power, and because Thermoplastic Bloom drops an orb every time you kill an ad with your baby hammer, you pretty much have endless health replenishment. This really plays a part in between picking up your hammer. You can run around and scoop up some orbs on the way to getting it, because don't forget, the baby hammer replenishes health when picking that up as well. They work great together. This mod is tied to solar affinity legs, but another great option would be Replenish, which is tied to void affinity, so keep that in mind. The major mod I chose is Font of Might for the 25% bonus weapon damage to any weapon matching your subclass when picking up an elemental well. I went with this one specifically because it stacks with all empowering buffs, and since this is more of a crowd control build, we need more firepower. Bang bang! If you don't want to use it, some good alternatives would be Well of Life for more healing or Well of Ordnance for bonus grenade energy. If you were looking for more super energy, I would recommend Font of Wisdom or Well of Potency because there's going to be a lot of wells lying around, so pick your poison. And finally, the Titan Mark. This is where the endgame mod comes into play. Thermoclastic Strike is an artifact mod that stuns overloads and refreshes your melee anytime you or a fire team member stuns an overload champion. Throwing your hammer acts just like overload rounds, including keeping the champion stunned and not teleporting all over the place, annoying ass motherfucker. This means you can get up in that champion's face and start clubbing him like he touched your wife's booty cheek. Nobody likes that. And the major mod is Elemental Charge, to gain 2 stacks of charge with light when picking up an elemental well matching your subclass. This ties into the supercharged mod that we put on the helmet, so you can get a total of 4 stacks. If you don't need the overload champion stopping power, you can remove Thermoplastic Strike and replace it with Particle Deconstruction for the fusion debuff. They both work good. I've seen a lot of players use this build or something similar with synthoceps for the bonus damage while surrounded, and it's a fantastic setup. The problem I have with this build is that it's well suited for something like solo Master Lost Sectors where you can just club tough enemies and insta-kill. But what if you get overwhelmed and can't rely solely on your little hammer and shotgun anymore? Better yet, what if you just want to goof around on the moon or something with lots of ads and bounce them around like a ragdoll because it's fun? Not everything has to be about the most damage possible. Let me introduce you to a seriously undervalued armor piece, the Severance Enclosure. Yes, you heard right. This exotic sees no love whatsoever, and in the spirit of me somewhat going against the grain with odd builds, we're gonna use it. The Severance Enclosure unleashes a 100% melee damage explosion around a low-level ad and 197% on majors when using a charged melee. It also procs on finishers as well. The bigger the ad, the bigger the explosion. And one of the great things about this chest piece is that it also procs on the enemy when you hit him with the hammer. That's right, you can chuck a hammer across the map and wipe out a whole group of ads. You can't do that with synthoceps, can you? No. Granted, you lose out on 200% melee damage, but do you seriously need that in normal activities? I don't need to do 999,000 damage on a shank and a strike. I'm sorry. But that's the beauty of this build and why a lot of players like it. You have the versatility and the damage potential by just swapping out whatever exotic you're using for synthoceps and putting on a shotgun with 1-2 punch. You now have a boss and champion killer. Some really good weapons to pair with this build if you're not in a boss fight, and why I used Font of Might in the first place, are the Sunshot to go boom, Taku's Divination, or as I like to call it, the Taco Dividends. And you're gonna laugh at this one, the Jotun, that's right, the dad gun. Especially this one if you use Particle Deconstruction instead of Thermoplastic Strike. They all get a 25% damage bonus from Font of Might, and all 3 of these weapons have fantastic ad clearing potential. Now, as far as my stats go, I just threw on whatever. In fact, I don't even have a build with a 100 stat. Figured I would mention that because usually somebody asks. If you've never tried a baby hammer build, go check it out. If you have been using it, try it out with Severance or something like Dune Marchers or even the ACDO feedbacks, and let me know what you think. Like I said earlier, I put this build together a long time ago, and I know everyone's using some variation of it now, so it's old news, but I'm a sucker for underutilized exotics, which is why I'm putting it out now. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you found it helpful, a like would be awesome, but more importantly, be good to one another and stay true to yourself. Thank you!